Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon's Member Spotlight brought to you by Brentwood Chamber of Commerce. My name is Colin Barber and I'm Chairman of Brentwood Chamber of Commerce. I also run a business called The Management Mechanic, specialising in business consultancy and management training. In fact, the ethos of my business is helping you to understand how people work, which is a great idea for running these webinars to find out a little bit more about how our members work and how their businesses work. Our guest today is Ian Braysher from Eye Bray, and we'll be hearing from Ian very, very shortly and finding out a little bit more about his business and, of course, about his background. We'd like to thank you all very much for joining us today. Obviously, the webinar is brought to you as members of Chamber of Commerce to help you find out a little bit more about what other members do, for two reasons, really, amongst others. Firstly, to obviously help you to find out the sort of members you may be able to do business with. You may be able to sell them something, or they may have something which you're interested in purchasing. And also to find out a little bit more about how other members operate their businesses, because there may be some sort of tips which you can get from how they run their business, which would help you in terms of the way you run your business as well. So lots of mutual benefits to finding out more about the other members. Of course, the reason for the Member Spotlight, it evolved literally just a month ago because of the fact that we used to hold our Meet the Members events, which have proved very popular, where each month a different member would invite everyone to come around to their business to find out a little bit more about their business. Obviously, at the moment, that's not been, the last few months, that's not been practical. So we hit on the idea of a Member Spotlight, which still gives you a chance to find out a little bit more about the members from the comfort of your own home or from your own office. Also, just in case I forget to remind you later on, this afternoon's webinar is being recorded and it will be broadcast on YouTube. Probably sometime tomorrow will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And so if you know anyone who wasn't able to watch this afternoon's webinar who'd like to watch it, then do forward them the YouTube link, which will be sent to you once it's uploaded. And also, we've had a couple of guests on already. We've had two businesses already, Snap and Blue Seraph, have been in the Member Spotlight. So if you're interested in watching those webinars, if you didn't get to see them, then they are also available on our YouTube channel. So for those of you who aren't so familiar with Zoom, just to let you know, there is a Q&A button at the, well, probably at the bottom of your screen or somewhere on your screen. So if you've got any questions which you'd like to put to Ian about his business or any general questions, then if you type them in and they'll come up on my screen, and either during the interview or towards the end of the interview, then I can ask him any questions which you've got for him. So obviously I've got some questions sort of lined up to ask him, and he's going to tell us a bit about his business. But if you've got anything specific which you would like to know, then obviously do take the opportunity to put your questions to Ian, and I'll be happy to put them to him on your behalf. So all that remains really is to invite our guest Ian to join us. So are you there, Ian?
Yes, I am. Hi, Colin.
Good afternoon, Ian, and welcome. And well, there we go, Eye Bray, Ian Braysher from Eye Bray. So I guess the first thing I'm going to ask you actually is to tell us about your name, the name Eye Bray, and you know, how that came about. And obviously, I presume it's a play on words, but perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit more about how that came about.
Yeah, it is indeed a play on words. So the letter I rather than the letter I. Sorry, the word I rather than letter I, and then Bray shortening my surname. But it's there because I set up my own business so that other people could view theirs differently, and that's what the I logo is for. It's to remind people that businesses kind of change throughout their lifetime, and to continually review it. If they can view it differently, then so do others.
So that's quite interesting, actually. I like that particular phrase. You said so people encourage people to see their business differently. So it's not just how you see their business, but actually encouraging them themselves to look at it from a different way. Is there? Could you tell us a little bit more about that and the philosophy behind it and how you actually achieve it?
Yeah. So lots of people will recognise the fact that they need to make some kind of a change because they're spending too much time doing this, too much time doing that, not getting the results that they wanted. So it's spending time with them, listening to what they really wanted from their business, looking at what they do now, and then talking to them about how they can change things inside so that everything will manifest itself and become more of what they wanted it to be originally.
Right. Okay. And do you find that it's fairly straightforward getting people to take that view, to look at their business differently?
Well, it's not so much that people fear change, but people fear failure. And they all say, well, what if it all goes wrong? So yeah, trying to persuade people to make those kind of changes is tough for that reason. I always think of these things at least as learning opportunities, and if they don't look at these things, then they miss out potentially on so much.
And I noticed in your just your poster there behind you, it says we can help transform your business into the organisation you always wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Do you find that most of your clients have got a clear idea of the organisation they wanted it to be, or do you find that some of them people have lost sight of actually where they want their business to be?
So many times they get really held up in the day-to-day, and they do exactly what you've said, that they lose sight of that that original vision, and so that taking them out of that is what normally brings them back to, yeah, you're right, this is what I wanted, this is how I wanted to be thought of, this is how I wanted to be seen, and then they can build back towards that.
Yeah, exactly. So and once you do that, presumably that also arouses the interest and makes them more motivated as well, once they realise actually why they're in business.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the win-win situation. They then become re-engaged with the idea that they had in the first place, or realising how that can be tweaked so it's even better because they've learned things along the way, and they then get what they want. So they're all fired up, and they get more of what they wanted in the first place. It's fabulous working with people like that.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we're going to find out a little bit more about Eye Bray as we progress this afternoon. But first of all, I just want to find out a little bit more about yourself, because obviously this isn't your first job or your first business venture. I think you told me you started this about 3 years ago. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you've got a career history behind you. Tell us a little bit more about how you about your career and how you developed it into Eye Bray.
Right. Well, I started at school wanting to be an accountant. So my subjects were kind of targeted with that as an end goal. Unfortunately, at the beginning of my sixth form year, my father passed away, and that just blew 6 months straight out of the water. I wasn't able to catch up, and I didn't get the grades that I needed to go to university to take my my accountancy course. So I went down to Romford Job Centre, and I saw a job there on a card that said, come work in a bank. And I thought, well, accountancy, banking, figure work, yeah, probably not too far away. And that's where I started. I started in the Co-op Bank in Stratford as a grade 1 clerk. And you couldn't be further away from working with figures than you can imagine. You know, it was doing the post in the evening, making sure that every letter that got sent out had the right post on it. It had nothing to do with finance at all. And it wasn't until a couple of jobs later, when I got my first job in the city, in the money market back office area, that I kind of really started to gear up to that international banking experience that I then had for the next 30 years.
So what was it prompted you to leave retail banking and move into the city? Was it the lure of money, or was it a different challenge?
It was actually someone recommended me to speak to a person in a recruitment consultant. They had worked up there and had come to work where I was working at the time, and said, oh, you need to speak to this person. I'm sure they'd like you. You'd be really good. And the funny thing is that when I was at school, I was always kind of the shy, nerdy kid. And it wasn't until I started to play rugby that I started to come out of my shell. I started to get a little bit of respect. So at that age, it was still hard for me to think of myself as being valuable to someone. So doing that, you know, what I'm asking people to do in their businesses. Doing that was hard for me, which is why I appreciate it. It's hard for them to do it with the business. But it paid off. You know, I had a 30-year career in international and commercial banking, where I surpassed the goals that I had for myself.
Do you remember what those goals were?
Yes.
Originally?
My goal was to be the head of a department somewhere, so that I'd be managing 12 to 15 people. I thought that was good enough. I mean, my background, you know, was that my dad worked for himself or with someone for very many years. He was an interior decorator, and you know, I was, both me and my brother, we were kind of the first to kind of venture into real professional roles. My brother was a quantity surveyor, and I went into banking.
How did it feel though when you found that you'd actually exceeded your goals?
It felt a bit unreal, to be honest. You're sitting in this job, and all of a sudden, well, the way it happened for me anyway, I didn't apply for a promotion. I actually got put forward for it, and I went from managing, how many was at the time? It was about 8 or 9 people at the time, up to managing 20 people all in one go. So that was a huge jump. And then didn't stop there. I then got promoted further to be head of the operations middle office, where I was looking after 50 people. And I always thought that for these kind of things, you would really have to push and ask. My ethos for myself is to be the best that I can be, and that's how it paid dividends for me. People noticed what I was doing. This shy little boy from Romford found a niche that he really fit into, and you know, I got up to report to what essentially was the director of operations for for the European area of a global bank. So yeah, far exceeded what I wanted, and in some respects very proud of myself for doing it.
Yeah, sounds great. So one of your key principles was, as you say, be doing the best you can at whatever you were doing, and you feel that was one of the things that helped you in sort of knuckling down and getting on with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Did you have any particular mentors in the bank who people may not intentionally inspired you, but people you looked up to or learned a lot from that you remember fondly?
There is someone actually, and unfortunately he's not with us anymore. He was a chief risk officer, and he always said to me, think about what you're missing out on by doing what you're doing. And if you're going to do it, make sure that you research it so that you do it right as quickly as you can. And that was really fabulous. Of course, you're never going to go through your work life and not make mistakes. No one would ever think that. But by talking to those around you and having good sounding boards, because particularly within the bank, there was about 4 or 5 people that I go to for particular aspects of the job that I did. I mean, what I did impacted finance, front office, back office, legal. So I had to make sure that anything that I did would either prove a benefit or not impact those other areas. So all of those areas, I had my own go-to people that I would use as sounding boards.
So, and then we had the change. So what was it? Prompted you to decide to? Did you turn your back on the banking world, or was it the circumstances forced it on you, or how did you come to be?
A little bit of both. So there was an opportunity where, you know, the traditional white envelope appeared as a possibility on the table, and I thought, yeah, why not? It's the right kind of time to do it, and I definitely at that point in time knew that I wanted a change in direction. I wouldn't necessarily want to go back into the corporate world at that level. I definitely want to do something where there was more of a tangible benefit. Working in the wheels of a global bank, it's hard sometimes to see the true benefit of what you do.
So what about, was that Eye Bray came about straight away, or was there a time when you were sort of wondering what to do, or did you try some other things?
Yeah, with my package, I had a 3-month spell with a firm of consultants, and they were working with me to develop a CV, develop a presence, to look at the kind of job that I wanted to do. And they said, you know what, for all the skills that you have, there is a need out there in the SME community for something like this. And that's where the seed was laying, and it took me another couple of months to get everything together. And Eye Bray was born on the 4th of October 2017. And I knew I wanted to get a couple more qualifications under my belt, so I then did my ITIL and GDPR qualifications to go with my Prince 2, and that's how it all started.
So what is it that makes the Eye Bray unique? What's your speciality? If I was thinking in terms of, I knew someone who was looking to get something done, what would prompt me to say, oh yeah, Eye Bray would be the right person, people or to speak to about that?
I think the unique part, I mean, you're a consultant as well, Colin. You've got a huge amount of knowledge behind you. The unique part that I say I bring is, with all of this knowledge, I get to know who the owner is, what the company ethos is, and I'll only encourage them to move down roles that are a fit ethically and within the company ethos. Because for me, it's no good joining a program that's meant for go-get-em sales kind of people if your company hasn't got that approach to doing business. That's it in a nutshell, really. It's not about the huge do this. It's about bringing out things that the company themselves can consider as viable ways forward.
And you describe yourself as a boutique consultancy.
Yes.
Can you tell me what that means?
I think that there's a number of consultancies out there that are a gathering of fantastic minds, and they come together and form a consultancy of kind of 4, 5, 6 people, and they cover a vast array of subjects. I come on my own, so therefore unique and boutique. But then what I bring as trusted partners are those people that they know over 3 years. I know hand on heart that they have the same thing in their core as I do, that they listen first, and that they will work with a company to highlight the brand that they want perceived, that they'll have the financial process for their company that fits them. And it's not about someone just sitting there saying, do this.
Mm. And you mentioned that one of your areas where you've sort of brushed up your knowledge is GDPR. What is it now? Is it a couple of years since the law was introduced?
Yeah, 2018, 23rd of May 2018 was when the Data Protection Act got royal assent. So that's when the law changed from the 1998 Act to the 2018 Act. The 2018 Act mirrors the GDPR as a directive from the EU. And yeah, so we're as a continent, we're all in it together as far as data protection is concerned at the moment.
So before asking you about what the training you provide in GDPR, what's your opinion of GDPR? Do you think it's been a successful law? Do you think it's achieved what it set out to achieve? Do you think it's been a bureaucratic nightmare? Do you think it's the benefits outweigh the disadvantages? What's your view?
My view is that it's an unfortunate consequence of how certain areas of society work. So I understand completely how a lot of people think, oh, it's another box ticking exercise. I get it, and to a certain extent it's true. However, when you're dealing with a client, as well as wanting to provide him with your product because you believe it's the best there and the best fit for your client, you should also think that his information, the information that you hold for him, that he's entrusted you with, you should treat with respect. And it's kind of like an attitude thing, really. If all you want to do is buy and sell products and make money, and that's your prime driver, 90% of the time, at some point down the line, you're going to fall foul of it.
And is that the area where you're advising businesses in terms of how to make sure they basically follow the rules?
Yes, there's a lot. There's a lot of very basic stuff that people just don't do. You know, it's like how many businesses have got a written business plan, and of those that have got a written business plan, there's probably another equally low percentage that has got that has actually got written policies that are fit for GDPR. Interesting
point that came up, I think it was yesterday, so I think it was on social media about this, about the pubs opening, and I'm not sure actually they're legally obliged to collect names and addresses, or it's something the government suggested they collect names or names or phone numbers at any rate. So apparently when you go to a pub, there's someone with a clipboard asking you for your name and phone number of at least one person in each group, although I must admit I went to one pub and they didn't ask me that. Is that something which I presume it's GDPR compliant if it's done properly, but are there sort of areas where pubs might be making mistakes in terms of not being GDPR compliant by asking for all those details?
Yeah, so the whole thing about GDPR is making sure that everything you do is fair, transparent, that you only ask for what you need. So you have to think of the purpose, why you're doing it. You only hold it for the appropriate period of time, and then it's destroyed. So actually, funnily enough, I've done a blog on it today. So it's a quick A to E, 5 simple steps for track and trace. And just for track and trace, you only need to keep the records for 21 days, no longer. After 21 days, bin it or destroy it. And as I say, it's all about being respectful of people. And also, if there is, as a business owner, you've got staff. If you run a pub, you get close to your staff. I know a number of pub owners that their staff is almost like part of an enlarged family. And if one of your family could become ill and you could prevent it, surely that's what you'd like to do. So again, it's just, to me, it just makes sense that you do this. You know what staff is on shift, on what day, so that if something does come up, not only do you pass these details on to the NHS, so that they can contact the other visitors to the pub, you can tell your staff, oh, by the way, got to go and get a test. We're going to have to close for 3 days, or get another team in, so that we can continue to work for those 3 days until the test results come back.
So talking about obviously the current circumstances, and how has that affected your business, the coronavirus and the lockdown and everything? Has it stinted the growth of your business, or has it presented new opportunities?
It certainly meant that I've had to do things differently. The consultations haven't stopped. A lot of them have been pro bono because I've wanted people to sample what I can do without any cost, and I'm fortunate enough to have the resources to do that. But yeah, for some reason, there are a lot of people, I see it as struggling on their own. And when there is free support out there, no one's going to judge you. And it's not a case of, you know, oh, I can't cope with the business that I created. It's just about sometimes you're too involved in it that you can't see the wood for the trees. So I would say, yeah, it doesn't matter who it is. If someone's offering free support, go and get some.
Right, well, I've got a question actually for you from one of our viewers, and it says, at what point would you need to call in Eye Bray Limited to help a business? And then do you work with creatives?
Yes, I work with creatives. The one place it's actually difficult for Eye Bray to work with is retail, but creatives, yes. And the point at which you should consider is when you can't see what your next step is. Whenever you have a vision, you have to take a step to start you on that journey to reach your vision. And sometimes you just don't know what that next step is. That's probably as good a time as any to call in Eye Bray to sort that out.
Okay, well, maybe an option sort of tied in with another question I've got from someone watching this afternoon is how to contact you. So do you want to just remind us of are you on social media first of all?
Yes, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm a member of the Chamber, so you can see my bio and my contact details there. The contact details on the banner behind me at the bottom, so of course they can't be seen. But yeah, the email address is fully GDPR compliant. It's inquiries at and then eyebray.com. So yeah, I mean, there's so many ways in which you can make some very simple changes to your processes that take out a lot of GDPR worries.
I'm curious about that, Ian. You said your email address is GDPR compliant. Did I hear that right? Does that mean that some email addresses aren't GDPR?
Well, yeah. So perhaps a bad wording by me. If you've got a unique name like mine, if I was to have ian.braysher at eyebray.com as an email address, I would be instantly recognizable. I mean, if you put my name in Google, I am the only Ian Braysher, certainly in the country at the moment. Whereas if your name is John Smith, it's not potentially as damaging to have John Smith at eyebray.com. But that's what data protection is there for. It has to give you principles to protect those who are unique. When those details that are unique about you come out, then again, you should be protected. What the privacy laws have been trying to do for decades. The interesting thing, something that I have quoted before on webinars and seminars, is there's a very famous female personality with a very distinctive tattoo. And if you see that tattoo, you know who that person is. You don't need to know their name. You don't need to know anything else, but you'll know who that person is when you see the tattoo. And it's all of red roses. So those of people who are into popular music culture will probably know who I'm talking about.
Fascinating. So my final question, Ian, is what have you learned about starting up a business? Any tips or advice you give to someone else who's starting up a business, or any pitfalls you recommend avoiding?
I probably haven't stopped learning yet, but certainly I would say look at all of the elements of your business that will require some kind of systematic report. So one of the things that I didn't do until very recently was to have a company email account with Gmail. So how I register for Zoom is with a company Gmail account. And so if now I ever need to subscribe to anything, I don't need to give anything about myself. I can give another email account, which means basically that there's loads of thinking. And I met someone probably 3 years ago now, who spent 6 months actually doing research and building a lot of the foundations for their product before they actually went to developing anything. And at the time when I met her, I didn't understand that. And of course now, I'm 3 years down the line. There's all sorts of things that I could have had in place right at the start if I'd have wanted to, and it would have helped dispel some of the confusion about, particularly for me, how do I do this, how do I do that, how do I do the other, and having these particular arrangements really works.
Good. Okay, thank you. Well, it's been a great pleasure having you with us this afternoon, Ian, and a fascinating story there, and both in terms of hearing about your banking career and also about Eye Bray. And obviously, wish you all the best and continued success with Eye Bray, and hope you continue to provide excellent and well-meaning services to both chamber members and other businesses in and around the Brentwood area. And just want to let the viewers know that this is being recorded. So if you didn't join us right at the beginning, or you've had to pop out during this webinar, then do feel free to have a look at it on YouTube. It will be uploaded to YouTube later on, well, probably tomorrow now. And also a good opportunity for me to tell you about our next webinar in 2 weeks' time, our next member spotlight, which is on exactly 2 weeks from now, Thursday the 23rd of July, when we'll be talking to Jane Bennett from Bennett's Funeral Directors. And Bennett's Funeral Directors is certainly one of the oldest established businesses in Brentwood. I believe they've been in Brentwood for well over 100 years, and also one of the most well-known businesses in terms of their location at the end of the high street by the traffic lights there. So we'll be talking to Jane and find a little bit more about her business and about how she's been coping through the coronavirus crisis as well. So that's in 2 weeks' time. Do register. Full details will be available on the Chamber of Commerce website. So all that remains is for me to say thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and most importantly, thank you, Ian, for being our guest. It's been a great pleasure, and look forward hopefully to meeting you again in real person, hopefully in the not too distant future. Absolutely. So thanks very much to all of you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.